All right, now that we set up our workspace, we can finally jump into the P5 basics. I put on this little graph just so you get a brief reminder of what we will cover. The main thing, the body tracking, will be done with MediaPipe. We will use P5.js for that. So this is kind of what we are working towards. We still need a way of really getting visual results, of rendering things on the screen so we can see what we're tracking. And this is why we will need P5.js. So we have to cover some basics in P5.js first in order to be able to use MediaPipe and to render everything in the browser. So we will focus only on the basics of P5 that are really necessary for you to work with MediaPipe. So it will be a selection of concepts. It's not a full cover of P5, but we will only focus on the things that you really need for the second part. And yeah, these are basic beginner concepts. So you might have heard some of these already. If you're familiar with them, you might want to skip this part. But if you're completely new, I will talk you through all of them and give you a basic understanding of how these things work and how you can apply them later in the process. Great, so let's finally start coding. Here we are into the first example I provided for you. It's available for download under this video. And the way you open it is you download all the examples to your downloads folder or whatever. And then inside Visual Studio Code, you will open this folder. Here, this is Ellipse mouse. And you will simply open the folder and it will include all the files inside automatically. So all the files inside the folder are now here on the left. We can go through it quickly. There's an index.html, there's a P5min.js, there's a preview image. You will notice that for most of my examples, I will give you a little preview so you can kind of see how it will look like before you open it. There's a Sketch.js and there's a style CSS. If you don't have this view, it's hidden here on the in the left menu. One thing that we can test right from the beginning is to see if our preview plugin works that we installed in the previous video. If you have it installed, there's a little go live here on the bottom right corner. So I will click that. Okay, and we can see it opened my browser and something is happening. We will cover what's happening here in a second. So I will rearrange my screen so I can see both things at the same time. So whenever I change something here in my files, I will get a live update on the left side in the browser. So let's quickly look what kind of files we have here. First of all, there's an index.html. So there's different types of files. There's HTML, there's JavaScript files, and there's CSS files. HTML, this is like the backbone, the skeleton of the internet. HTML is everything, or like all the core elements that are rendered in the browser are basically built in HTML. Like there's tags, there's images, there's headlines, there's different ways of structuring the content. And this is all written here in the HTML file. Currently, there's not so much going on. There's a head and there's a body. So it's a bit like a person in a sense. Inside the head with some things like there's a title. This is the thing that is here on the top. Then there's some important things. We're loading a style sheet. So we're loading other files. Here, this style sheet is called style.css. And this is actually this here. So it's simply loading the file that's included in the folder, and it kind of adds it to the head of our HTML file. There's another thing. Here we are loading the P5.js library, P5min.js. This is this one here. So again, this is also what I included for you. It doesn't have to be downloaded locally to your folders. It can also be loaded via CDN. So you can kind of, a CDN means it's hosted somewhere at the internet and you can just load it via an URL. So you can also do that. I usually like to include all my stuff offline, so I know it's all there. I can use it whenever I want, and I will not lose it. But later on, to make things smoother and faster, you might want to use a CDN. So I simply added a little example so you know how to do that. And then the last thing in the body, we're including a Sketch.js, and this is actually what we will change. This is like the file that we are working on. So we can have a look to all of these. Let's quickly go through them. So P5.js, this is a huge file with tons of lines of code. And this is basically the whole library of P5.js. So every function, everything you can do, everything you can use in P5 is written here in this file. And we included it to our project file. Preview JPEG, again, this is just a preview for you, so you kind of know what's happening in this lesson, but it's not necessary. You can delete it if you want. Sketch.js, this is the part where we'll work on, where most of our work will happen. And lastly, style CSS. Yeah, I covered HTML. CSS is kind of how everything looks like. So in CSS, you could change, what type of fonts are used on this website, what colors do they have, how do things appear visually. So everything you want to do on the visual appearance of a website usually happens in a CSS file. In our case, there's really not so much happening here, and this is because the things we are rendering here are all rendered inside a canvas, and this is like a cutoff area. It's like a canvas area that's simply one HTML element of the website, and the style can only affect things like where we position it or how it's displayed on the site. But all things like color and fonts, all of these will happen in the JavaScript file because we're working on this canvas area. All right, so lastly, let's have a look at the Sketch.js. And again, this is like where the real work will take place. So in our Sketch.js, there's like different sections that we can identify. First thing is a function that is called the setup. And everything that's happening in this function is between these two curly brackets. So you can see there's one opening curly bracket and one closing curly bracket. These things are really important because whenever we miss any of these brackets, you can see things turn red and we might get errors. So it's really important that whenever we open these brackets, we have to close them. And as soon as we hit save, so in our case, Command S, or if you go manually, you can go to File, Save. This is when the changes will be reflected in the browser. You might say it's like using the right grammar for a language. Only in this case, if we mess up the grammar, things might just stop working. This can be frustrating at times. You can also see that lots of these lines are ended with semicolons. This is whenever we use a function. For example, here you can see this is a function. It's creating our canvas. And then inside the round brackets, there are different values to the function. And then it's ended with a semicolon. So these are things that will repeat in the code that we see. There's a second big section, and this is the draw part. Again, this is encompassed by these two curly brackets, one opening, one closing. So what's the difference between those two? So setup is really the part where we initialize our program, where we write like basic stuff that will be applied once to the program, like how big is our canvas, what's the background color. These are things that are important for the initiation of our sketch. And then in draw, this is kind of a continuous loop that's repeating all the time. So you can kind of imagine the setup. This is something that runs once. Once it's done, it will jump to the draw part and will loop this part until we close our window, basically. So this is happening all of the time. We can go through it line by line so you have a better understanding. There are grayed out areas. These are comments. Comments are helpful for us to kind of document our work. How do you make a comment? Easiest way to do is if you write two slashes. This is a comment. So this is like the most simple way for you to write a comment. And it will not affect the code. It will be basically ignored by the browser. It's only for us or for other developers. It's for you, to leave hints or to give other people like an understanding of what you're doing, or maybe to explain things, even for yourself. The comment can be in its own line. It can also be behind something else. For example, here after canvas, we can say, this is where we create the canvas. Again, this is also a comment. And you can also see I used a different way of writing it here with this the slash and the star. This is a multi-line comment. So this can range on multiple lines. This is a multiple line comment. So this simply allows you, to write longer comments that stretch upon more than one line. All right, so comments, they're quite useful. You can also comment out lines. For example, if you write something like the create canvas and you don't want that to happen, we can put the 2 slashes before it and it will be ignored. So this means that the program will not use this line. Of course, this leads to some problems because we need it. But just so you know, sometimes you might want to comment out certain things. All right, so comments, quite useful. This is one line comment, and this was the multiple line comment. If you simply write something here, it will always assume it's part of the instructions, it's code. And of course, if it's something that doesn't make sense or it's not recognized as code, you will get an error. So whenever you write something that's not code, I will simply use a comment for that. All right, so we have that. What do we have next? Here's a function, it's called create canvas, and it has 2 values, 720 and 900. So this is where we create our gray area, our canvas, the thing that we render our stuff to. You will notice this has a fit width and a fit height, and those are exactly those 2 values. If we want different width for our canvas, we can simply write it here. Let's say, okay, it only has to be 100 pixels wide and 200 pixels tall, then it will be rendered accordingly. Oh no, it should be 500 pixels tall and 600 pixels wide, whatever. You can simply type it here. Why did I use 720 and 900? It's simply because I document a lot of my work on Instagram, and the posting format is 4:5, like the aspect ratio. And this happened to be a good size that you can display in the screen and record. So this is why all the examples are written in this format. So if you want, you can post your stuff on Instagram, basically. Then we have another line. It's called background. And yeah, background is giving us the color of the background. Why is there a 200? The 200 is the color. So there are different ways to express colors. One is to use values between 0 and 225, which is how we express colors from between black and white, basically. All right, little test. If I change the color here, why is nothing changing here? So this has to do with the order of our code. I told you that the setup is what's running in the beginning. So at some point it is rendering the background with color 0, which stands for black. But then it's jumping right to the draw. And here we have the line background again. You can see, so it's kind of overwriting what we did here. Okay, very brief detour on order of code. So just keep in mind that the lines are read or interpreted by the browser really from top to bottom. And that means that they will be executed in this line as well. So if you write something in the beginning and then change it later on, then it will overwrite what you previously wrote. It's a bit like as if you were talking to an artist and you try to give him literal instructions on what he has to do. So for example, you tell him, hey, you over there, pick the blue paint bucket. All right. So he grabs it, he holds it until a few lines later, you do stuff, and then you tell him, now pick the red paint bucket. All right. So now he's holding the red paint bucket. So it's kind of overwriting what you previously told him. Usually this is fine, and this is how it should be. Sometimes when you mess up your order, then you do stuff that you didn't didn't want. So always keep in mind the order is really read from top to bottom, and check if you're overwriting stuff that's important. Yeah. So let's put the black here actually. And now you can see we really have the black in the background. So I told you there's different ways to express colors. There's this very quick way of 0 to 255 to cover values from 0 is black, 255 is white, and everything between some sort of gray value. So this is why the 200 that we had in the beginning was this strange gray background. You might have heard of RGB. This is a way of expressing colors that are visible on the screen. RGB standing for red, green, and blue. And we can also use that. So if we type here 3 numbers instead of 1, then it will be automatically interpreted as RGB values. So let's use, I will type something here. So 255, 0 and 0. Why is this red? Red value is on maximum, 255. Green value is on 0, and blue value is on 0 too. So this is kind of like a pure red. We can do another test. So let's make our green value to the maximum, or our blue value to the maximum. All right. So this is working kind of good. Sometimes it's a bit, difficult to use these RGB values, so we can also use hex colors. A very quick tool to get hex colors is if you open Google and you simply type hex color picker, you will get this tool. It's integrated in their search, and whatever color you pick, the values are written here as RGB, CMYK, and also hex. And what we want for hex is simply this value. So the hashtag, and there's 6 digits or letters. And if you copy this to P5, you have to put it inside quotations marks. Let's just cover these other lines quickly. So there's another comment, it gets ignored. Then there's a fill color, in this case white. And this is the important part. We're drawing a shape, which is an ellipse. You can see there's 4 values connected to the ellipse function. Mouse X, mouse Y, 200, 200. So what do these do? The first 2 values are the position of our ellipse. And you can see right now it's attached to the mouse position. Maybe we change one of these. Let's simply write a value here. So now we can see the first value. So now we can see quite clearly that the mouse is kind of stuck on a certain width position, which gives us an indication that the first value must be the X position, like the position between left and right of our mouse, whereas the second value is the Y position. So it's kind of the height, which height we position the object. Let's go back here. And then the last 2 values are simply the width and the height of the ellipse. So let's change that as well. So you can see now we have a very weird stretched ellipse because we maxed the width to 900. So you can play with these values and see what happens. And yeah, so we can also get like extreme things. I think initially we had 200 by 200. Yeah. So this is something that's like repeated throughout P5.js, that every function has a certain set of parameters that you can change. So because there are so many different functions, sometimes we have to look at the reference from P5.js. You will find it on their website. And for example, you can see the ellipse. And here it's written like what each of these values does. For example, here it says, all right, the first parameter, x, is the x coordinate of the center of the ellipse. The second parameter is the y coordinate of the center of the ellipse. The third parameter is the width of the ellipse, and the fourth is the height of the ellipse. So if you're unsure, you can always check this reference, and you will it will tell you what of each of these values stand for and how you should express them. Okay, great. So let's do something fun. I told you there's a way to comment out lines, and now I'm simply commenting out the background. Let's see what happens. What's going on here? Whoa. Is this strange warm? What's going on? So why is this happening? It has to do with what I told you earlier about setup and draw. You might remember that the setup is something that's happening only once. So the first time we are rendering, our canvas size is defined, we have a background color, and then we're jumping into the draw, and this whole part is getting repeated. But we don't draw the background anymore. So now in the draw, we simply draw our ellipse, and instead of kind of erasing it by drawing the background fully over it, in the next iteration, we pick the color white again, and again we draw the ellipse at the position where we're currently at. So this means each time our canvas gets refreshed, this usually happens 60 times per second, so this depends on the frame rate of your screen. Each time we're refreshing the canvas, we're drawing a new ellipse, and all of the old ones are still visible because we're not painting something over them. If we were to draw the background, then this means we're simply putting black color over them. And again, draw the white ellipse at the current position of our mouse, which kind of gives us the illusion of a moving ellipse. It's not really moving. It's simply redrawn each frame at the current position of the mouse. So this is kind of a really fun way to show you how these things actually work, how the draw is connected to the setup, and how the things are rendered on our screen. All right, so I invite you to play with this and see what kind of variations you can get from it. And yeah, see you in the next video. I will continue a bit with this because I enjoy that a lot. Let's put some white here. All right, see you.